It was on October 27th in the year 1659 that two Quakers, William Robinson and Marmaduke Stevenson, who came from England in 1656 to escape religious persecution, were executed in the Massachusetts Bay Colony for their religious beliefs. The two had violated a law passed by the Massachusetts General Court the year before, banning Quakers from the colony under penalty of death. The Religious Society of Friends, whose members are commonly known as Quakers, was a Christian movement founded by George Fox in England during the early 1650s. Quakers opposed central church authority, preferring to seek spiritual insight and consensus through egalitarian Quaker meetings. They advocated sexual equality and became some of the most outspoken opponents of slavery in early America. Robinson and Stevenson, who were hanged from an elm tree on Boston Common in Boston, were the first Quakers to be executed in America. In the mid-18th century, John Woolman, an abolitionist Quaker, traveled the American colonies preaching and advancing the anti-slavery cause. He organized boycotts of products made by slave labor and was responsible for convincing many Quaker communities to publicly denounce slavery. Quakers did find solace in Rhode Island and other colonies, including Massachusetts, where anti-Quaker laws were later repealed, by the way. Another of many important abolitionist Quakers was Lucretia Mott, who worked on the Underground Railroad in the 19th century, helping lead fugitive slaves to freedom in the northern states and Canada. In later years, Mott was a leader in the movement for women's rights. Today, we remember William Robinson and Marmaduke Stevenson, two awesome Quakers who continue their eternity beyond this planet in their awesome plight for religious freedom, for human freedom. Because with those two, you'll find spiritual freedom. In 1873, on October 27th, of course, a DeKalb, Illinois farmer named Joseph Glidden submits an application to the U.S. Patent Office for his clever new design for a fencing wire with sharp barbs, an invention that will forever change the face of the American West. Joseph Glidden's creation was by no means the first barbed wire. He only came up with his design after seeing an exhibit of Henry Rose's single-stranded barbed wire at the DeKalb County Fair. But Glidden's design significantly improved on Rose's by using two strands of wire twisted together to hold the barb spurs firmly in place. Glidden's wire also soon proved to be well suited to mass production techniques, and by 1880, more than 80 million pounds of inexpensive Glidden-style barbed wire was sold, making it the most popular wire in the nation. Prairie and plains farmers quickly discovered that Glidden's wire was the cheapest, strongest, and most durable way to fence their property. As one fan wrote, quote, "It takes no room, exhausts no soil, shades no vegetation, is proof against high winds, and it's both durable and cheap," unquote. The effect of this simple invention on the life in the Great Plains was huge. Since the plains were largely treeless, a farmer who wanted to construct a fence had little choice but to buy expensive and bulky wooden rails shipped by train and wagon from distant forests. Without the alternative offered by cheap and portable barbed wire, few farmers would have attempted to homestead on the Great Plains, since they could not have afforded to protect their farms from grazing herds of cattle and sheep. Barbed wire also brought a speedy end to the era of the open-range cattle industry. Within the course of just a few years, many ranchers discovered that thousands of small homesteaders were fencing over the open range where their cattle had once freely roamed, and that the old technique of driving cattle over miles of unfenced land to railheads in Dodge City or Abilene was no longer possible. It was 2:35 in the afternoon on October 27th in the year 1904 that New York City Mayor George McClellan takes controls of the inaugural run of the city's innovative new rapid transit system, the subway. While London boasts the world's oldest underground train network, opened in 1863, and Boston built the first subway in the United States in 1897, the New York City subway soon became the largest American system. The first line, operated by the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, IRT, traveled 9.1 miles through 28 stations. Running from City Hall in Lower Manhattan to Grand Central Terminal in Midtown, and then heading west along 42nd Street to Times Square, the line finished by zipping north all the way to 145th Street and Broadway in Harlem. On opening day, Mayor McClellan so enjoyed his stint as engineer that he stayed at the controls all the way from City Hall to 103rd Street. At 7 p.m. that evening, the subway opened to the general public, and more than 100,000 people paid a nickel each to take their first ride under Manhattan. IRT service expanded to the Bronx in 1905, to Brooklyn in 1908, and to Queens in 1915. Since 1968, the subway has been controlled by the Metropolitan Transport Authority, the MTA. The system now has 26 lines and 472 stations in operation. The longest line, the 8th Avenue A Express train, stretches more than 32 miles from the northern tip of Manhattan to the far southeast corner of Queens. Every day, some 4.5 million passengers take the subway in New York. With the exception of the PATH train connecting New York with New Jersey and some parts of Chicago's elevated train system, New York's subway is the only rapid transit system in the world that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No matter how crowded or dirty, the subway is one New York City institution few New Yorkers or tourists could do without. The historic information divulged on this audio file can be verified on history.com.